Hey guys, welcome to another thrilling installment of the official Schwift X speedrun attempt to summarize all of Game of Thrones as quickly and efficiently as humanly possible. We're going to get through as much of this epic fantasy story as we possibly can in as short a period of time as possible, which means no rambling, no tangents, I promise. We did a previous installment, we did part one a while ago, and in an hour of solid balls to the wall, pedal to the metal recap entertainment, we got through a total of 1.5 episodes. We got through 1.5 episodes, so we're currently halfway through episode 2. So I'm hoping to pick up the pace and get even quicker through this glorious story. We're going to see how quickly, any percent, we can achieve the speed run of Game of Thrones. So time starts, and we're starting from halfway through episode 2, alright? So time starts. You ready? All right, let's go. So we got Tyrion Lannister, we got Benjen Stark, we got Jon Snow arriving at the Wall. This glorious icy testament to ice-based architecture. When you think about it, they probably should have just used rocks, right? Couldn't they have just used rocks? Wouldn't that be just as effective as an ice wall, and perhaps more effective, given that they're ice creatures and so on? But anyway, this is a moment of wonder and fantasy and passing the threshold into a world of magic. That's what Jon Snow's journey is leading to. But meanwhile, a little further south, down at Winterfell, we got an entirely different situation, a political situation. Because what's happened is that Catelyn Stark has just gotten a letter from her sister Lysa saying that the Lannisters were responsible for the death of her husband Jon Arryn. This is a TLDR. It's a problem. It's spooky. The Starks are worried about the Lannisters. So the remaining leaders at Winterfell, since Ned's gone, the remaining leaders, Catelyn Stark, Robb Stark, Roderick, Theon, Luwin. Why is Theon there? But Theon's there, and they're all discussing, okay, how do we respond to this threat? We've got to go and tell Ned. We've got to go down to King's Landing. We've got to work out what is going on. And it's decided that Catelyn will go south with Roderick, none other than Roderick Cassel, he of the glorious whiskers, who of course will eventually be killed by Theon, which tragically. All right, so yeah, Ned went south to go and be Hand of the King. You know this, Alexandra. Okay, stop hating on Theon, Fresh Ridgy says. Theon. Well, yeah, Theon can hate himself. We don't need to help. All right, so Daenerys Targaryen, meanwhile, in the Dothraki Sea, is getting some sex ed from Doreah, the Handmaiden. And Daenerys uses that sex ed with Drogo to teach him that there are other sex positions other than doggy style or horsey style or whatever they're calling it. And this, like, kicks off a new chapter in Drogo and Daenerys' relationship, one in which Daenerys has more agency and more respect, and they start to develop into a loving relationship, which is all great. Although I think, you can question, like, whether this is a great, like, message or story. Like, this started out as an abusive, rapey relationship, and it becomes a good relationship through the power of sex positions. Like, I don't know. I think there's some unpacking to be done there, but don't worry about it. And also, Khal Drogo has abs. And then Sansa, down in the south, is walking her adorable dire doggy lady, which is just, this is just such a perfect image of what Sansa's character is all about, because she's got her wolf, her symbol of, like, the magic and the beasts and the ancient lineage of House Stark. This powerful beast is kept on a cute little leash while Sansa walks along the grounds, which is just a perfect metaphor for how Sansa represses her magical side in an attempt to be more political and ladylike. And of course, the death of Lady symbolizes the death of Sansa's connection to the magic and the wild and the violence. Because this is what Sansa aspires to be. She wants to be a lady in King's Landing with a great haircut, and well, it'll get complicated, because Sansa's dreams of what this place should be quickly get questioned. Like she meets Sandor Clegane, and she meets Elon Payne, these gentlemen who are not the glorious pretty knights of the stories that she's heard about. These characters are not the sort of handsome gentlemen who Sansa was hoping to meet. They are hateful, they are violent, they are cynical. So this is like a repudiation of what everything that Sansa thought the South would be. So we are beginning to like question her dreams. But Sansa still is enthusiastic about Joffrey. She wants to marry the prince. She still believes that that's going to be great. But it's not, because they come across Arya, Sansa's sister Arya, with this butcher's boy, Micah. And they're having a good time by this river, the Red Fork, I think it is, the river where Rhaegar Targaryen was killed by Robert Baratheon. And Joffrey cannot look at a good thing and not just get like mad at it. Thanks for the super chat, YouTube Underground. We're not going to answer like super chat questions all the time because like this is a speed run, guys. We're being efficient. So Joffrey sees people having fun and immediately needs to poop on their parade. So he's like, "Yo, butcher's boy, wanna fight, mate?" And Micah's just like, "Mate, I'm literally a butcher's boy. Like, don't turn me into a sausage roll." And Joffrey's like, "I think I will turn you into a sausage roll." So then Arya intervenes and her justice mode kicks in and she just whacks Joffrey with a stick, and it's fantastic. And then Lady comes in and has a little nibble. Everyone's going in for a piece of the prince, and it's a great time. A great time is had. And Arya, this shot is so great. Just this shot here. Because this shows that Arya, for one moment, like she's just witnessed all this like injustice and bullshit, and for a moment she's like, hang on a minute, when I'm on this end of a sword, I have power. I can change the world around me. I can face the bullshit in my life, and I can change it for the better. I can get knobs like Joffrey on the pointy end, and that gives me power and agency. And so in this shot, Arya's like, there's something in this. So this is where the seeds are planted for violent, vengeful Arya. And there's sort of a moment where it's like, oh, hang on, is Arya going to kill the prince? But no, she's not that dark just yet. So instead, she throws the sword in a river, like a legend, and she runs off with Nymeria, her beloved Dogulon, at her heels. And so then she needs to run off, and she realizes, because she's a smart kid, she realizes that when you attack the prince, someone's gonna get beheaded. So she makes Nymeria run away. Heartbreakingly, she has to send her beloved pet into the woods, not to be seen again for like 6 seasons. So that's tragic. And I is smart enough to realize that that's necessary. But the injustice of the prince has robbed her of her furriest friend. And then Ned Stark is a good dad, and he's furious about this whole disappearance of his daughter situation. So he comes up to the king and the queen and the prince, and he's like, "What's this nonsense? Let's sort this shit out." And Robert is just sort of mad about it. And not very helpful. And Cersei is just her like angry mother, pregnant car lifting motherly rage kicks in, and she wants Arya's hand to be cut off, the old punishment for striking the king. Cersei's incredibly cruel about it, and we have this dispute over exactly what happened, where Arya is saying the truth that Joffrey accosted Micah, but then Sansa, she's stuck between two worlds. She wants to be loyal to her family, the Starks, but she also wants the good graces of Joffrey because she wants to be the queen. So Sansa just sort of says, "Oh, I don't know what happened," which is a really like weak, limp dick way to betray your family, right? Like she's undercutting Arya's message, and then Arya, her whole hot-headed, violent, impulsive side kicks in, and then she starts grabbing Sansa by the hair, which really doesn't help her sort of PR situation. So in the end, that makes the Stark cause look bad, and so Cersei's like, well, someone's got to be punished. And then Arya's like, well, Nymeria ran away, and then Cersei says, we have another wolf, which is awful, and what it means is that Cersei wants to kill Lady, Sansa's direwolf, who had nothing to do with any of this bullshit, but she wants blood for the injury of her beloved princely son. So another injustice is committed, and Ned Stark says that, well, I'm not going to let your executioner Ilyn Payne do it. I'm going to do this myself. The doggo deserves better than Ilyn Payne's blade, and so Ned does his duty and kills Lady. And this is symbolically like the death of Sansa's like stark, wild, fierce, violent side, which she sacrifices at the altar of wanting to be with Joffrey. So yeah, and we also see that Sandor Clegane the Hound kills Micah, and Ned sees that. And this killing of Micah by the Hound is one which Arya hates him for seasons and seasons. And then, at the moment that Lady dies, at the moment that the direwolf is dead, Bran Stark, crippled Bran, back in Winterfell, opens his eyes, which is a great little visual way of showing that there is a mystical connection between these direwolves and the Starks, and with Bran especially. All right, that's the end of episode 2. We're rolling. We're going so fast. This is a speed run indeed. All right, so meanwhile, you got, what's this? This is Stark's, is that Catelyn? That's Catelyn. No, all right, this is Ned and Sansa and Arya arriving at Winterfell at Red Keep in King's Landing. And Ned walks in and he sees Jaime Lannister by the Iron Throne. And this is like a recreation of what happened 17 years ago at Robert's Rebellion, when Ned and Robert killed the Targaryens and took over. And when they stormed King's Landing, they found Jaime Lannister, just having killed the king, sitting on the Iron Throne. So this is like a recreation. And this scene wasn't in the books, it's created for the show. And it's kind of a way of making Jaime more sympathetic. Like, we do have Jaime acting all arrogant and aggressive towards Ned, but we also have this moment of Jaime saying that, oh, you know, when the Mad King died, it felt like justice, because the Mad King had killed Ned's brother and father. So Jaime is sort of appealing to, like, hey, like, I had good reasons for doing what I did. But Ned just sort of coldly rejects Jaime, because he doesn't take lightly to people breaking their oaths and murdering their kings, even if those kings happen to be mad. So early on in season 1, we get a bit of humanization of Jaime and, like, make him more likable, and that doesn't really happen in the books until later on. And so Ned Stark is come back to King's Landing to sort out the political situation to rule as Hand, and he meets the colourful cast of characters who he'll be ruling with. So we got Peter Baelish, Littlefinger, who immediately chooses to say, hey, I really want to bang your wife. Like, that's how he chooses to introduce himself, because, of course, there is history with Littlefinger. Littlefinger once fought a duel against Ned Stark's brother, Brandon, for Catelyn's hand. And, yeah, that didn't end well for Petey Boy. And we've also got Pycelle, everyone's favorite octogenarian, who's just sort of mostly useless, really. And we've got Renly Baratheon, who everyone sort of forgets was in season 1. He's not very memorable in season 1. I think he was more memorable in the books when he had fluorescent green enameled armor all the time. That was great. But Renly and Ned are on sort of more good terms. And then we have Varys, the scheming, sumptuous spider. I was just thinking of S adjectives. And he just sort of does his thing, and he shows concern about the trouble on the King's Road and whatever. The point is that Ned realizes that, oh, hang on, Robert Baratheon isn't even going to come to the small council meetings. So Ned realizes that his job is really cut out for him in this moment. And then we have a scene between Cersei and Joffrey, and we start to get more of an insight into exactly how much of a shit Joffrey is, and it's a lot. He talks about how he wants to just oppress everyone and make everyone bend to his will, and, you know, he's a good little dictator in training, is Joffrey. Little baby tyrant junior. And Cersei is just, you know, protective towards Joffrey, loving in that fucked up Lannister way. Not that fucked up Lannister way, but a different fucked up Lannister way. And says that anyone who isn't us is our enemy. So that's the Lannister attitude. And that attitude is really what gets Cersei screwed over in the end. Like, Cersei thinks that, Cersei refuses to trust anyone, or even just to work with anyone other than herself and her immediate family. So that's what leads her to destroy, the alliance with the Tyrells in season 5. Cersei could have and should have worked with the Tyrells. Even if she doesn't like them, she can still work with them. But Cersei's attempt to destroy the Tyrells is what gets Cersei locked up by the High Sparrow in the end. So Cersei's attitude of it's all or nothing is what leads to her undoing. And Arya, meanwhile, is very angry about the death of Micah and the death of Lady, and so she immediately takes up a weapon. She takes up a knife to symbolize her anger at the injustice, and she says she wants to kill the prince, and that's sort of like a little babby version of her vengeance crusade that she goes on later, and she stomps off. Sansa gets given this doll by Ned, and Ned is bummed out because Sansa doesn't like the doll, because Sansa is trying to grow up. She's saying that, I don't care about dolls anymore. I'm a proper lady and I marry princes, and that's the sort of person I am. Sansa's trying to grow up, but well, she's not quite there yet. But that doll becomes a symbol of Sansa's innocence, because we later see that same doll in the background in Season 2, Episode 9, Blackwater, and it's sort of like this sad, discarded... Like in that scene, Sansa picks up this doll and, like, reminisces of, hey, remember when, like, I had innocence and naivety, and that's sort of what this comes to represent, Sansa's lost past. And also a symbol of Ned, who's dead by then. The doll appears a couple times. And so then Arya goes back to her room, and she's playing around with her sword, and then Ned comes in to have a father-daughter chat, and he's pretty good at it. He's just saying, like, I understand how you feel, I understand that you hate these Lannisters, but we've really got to just, like, stick together and be strong and about this. Like, if you've got to hate the prince, but don't hate Sansa. Don't hate your sister, because when the winds blow and the Starks survive and the Doggos and the winter, he doesn't actually say that in the show. I don't know why they don't say that in the show, but they later use that. They later use that line about the pack surviving later on in the show. And Arya is adorable with Needle. And Ned says that if you're going to wave around a sword, you'd better know how to use it. So Ned sets up the training with Syria Farrell. Okay, so then we got a crow outside Bran Stark's window. Or maybe it's a raven. I could never tell the difference between crows and ravens. But Bran sees the raven and he's awake now, and he's got stories told to him by Old Nan, the oldest person in Winterfell, if not the world. And we learn about the White Walkers, because Old Nan says, hey, did you ever hear about these frosty gentlemen called the White Walkers? They ride dead horses. They ride ice spiders. We might see ice spiders in Season 8. And then Robb comes in and he tries to comfort his brother, because Bran's a little bit bummed out about the whole, like, not having legs anymore situation. And Bran says, I'd rather be dead, which is an incredibly disturbing thing to hear from a child. And Robb doesn't really even have words. So Bran is in a really dark place at the moment. But this raven at his window is a hint of the mobility and magic that he'll rise to later on. And then Catelyn Stark arrives at King's Landing with Roderick of the Whiskers, and she's trying to be all sneaky like about it, but she gets whisked away to Littlefinger's brothel of all places. And Catelyn is, of course, offended by the brothel situation, and Littlefinger's like, oh, I only want to help. And then Varys, the other slimy character, turns up, and they examine the blade, the Valyrian steel knife that was used to try to kill Bran, and Littlefinger was like, hey, I know whose dagger that is. That's Tyrion Lannister's. And that's a total lie. But Littlefinger is just opportunistically using this moment as a way to further inflame the Lannister-Stark conflict that's brewing. And it's a really risky thing as well, because if, Tyrion Lannister was around to say, hey, that's actually not my dagger, why are you lying about that, Littlefinger? He could have ended up in some hot water. Littlefinger is a high-risk, high-reward player of poker. He goes all in. So that's what he does here. And Catelyn is like, oh my gosh, this just confirms all of my suspicions that the Lannisters are the real enemy. Let's go after them. And of course, Littlefinger, remember, just earlier last episode said, hey, I love Catelyn Stark so much. And he does love Catelyn Stark in his own sort of creepy, clutching way. And it's a reminder that, for all of Peter's romantic inclinations, he's ultimately self-serving. Like, there is no one who Littlefinger won't sacrifice on the altar of his own self-empowerment. All he really cares about is rising politically. And even those he loves are just pawns in that greater game. So then Tyrion Lannister is hanging out at Castle Black when he's just doing his sort of being a tourist up in the north. And Jon is training some of these Night's Watch recruits who he had conflict with before. Jon had an attitude that he was superior to everyone. But Tyrion and who was the other person? Was it Tyrion and someone else helped Jon to like get over his like pride and be more of a down-to-earth, humble person. But Alistair Thorne is not happy about that, because Alistair Thorne is a deeply bitter man, and he really rankles at this dumb kid coming up out of nowhere and trying to do his job for him. So Alistair Thorne, true to his name, is a real thorn in Jon's soft bits. And so meanwhile, Tyrion and Gior watch on. And then we got Littlefinger and Ned. Yeah, in this moment, yeah, so like Littlefinger makes a comment to Ned where he's like, oh, did you know that your wife is do you know where your wife is? And Ned's like, yeah, my wife is in Winterfell, like hundreds of miles away. And Littlefinger's like, oh, I know where your wife is. She's actually here in King's Landing. So sort of in this frame is the moment where you realize that, oh, Ned Stark is really like just out of his element. He is in the wrong climate. He is a polar bear in the Sahara. Like, he is just woefully ill-equipped for the situation that he's in. And then, yes, Hairless Oyster, we then get the thrilling choke session that I think Littlefinger enjoys a little bit too much. But Ned slams Littlefinger against a wall for saying, hey, I know where your wife is, let's go to the brothel, you know, which to be fair, you know, phrasing Littlefinger, he could have worked this out a bit better. And so Ned is aggressive to Littlefinger, and rightly so, because he knows that this man is horny for his wife. So a bit of wall throwing is in order, I think. But then they go inside, and then we cut